Dion stood in the center of a room made entirely of crystal that seemed to breathe with light. He could feel his heart pounding so hard it hurt. Around him, beings that barely looked real floated in mid-air, their bodies wrapped in what appeared to be living energy. These were the Velkari, and they were deciding the fate of Earth. Ambassador Hai-Jin stood beside him, her face tight with stress. She had been negotiating with these aliens for 3 months now, ever since their massive ships appeared in Earth's sky. The Velkari were ancient, powerful, and completely beyond human understanding. Their technology was so advanced, it looked like magic. "Please understand," Hai-Jin said, her voice steady despite everything. "We need more time. This is not how humans make such decisions." The largest Velkari, Chancellor Thane, moved forward. His skin rippled with colors Daehyun had no names for. When he spoke, the translator device made his voice sound like wind chimes and thunder mixed together. "Time is what you do not have, Ambassador. The red bloom continues to kill your people. 50,000 died yesterday alone. Without our medical technology, your species will be extinct in 4 years." Daehyun felt sick. His mother was dying of red bloom back on Earth. The disease turned human cells into something like red crystal, slowly and painfully. Nothing humans tried could stop it. Only the Velkari had the cure. But marriage? Hai-Jin protested. "Surely there must be another way to prove compatibility." "There is not," Thane said firmly. "This is our law, unchanged for 2 million years. When we discover a new intelligent species, we must test genetic compatibility through union. If the union is possible, the species joins the galactic community. If not, they must remain isolated for 10,000 years until they evolve further." 10,000 years? Daehyun spoke for the first time. His voice cracked. "Everyone on Earth will be dead in 4 years. You know this." Thane turned those strange liquid metal eyes toward him. "We do, which is why you should accept. My daughter, Princess Nira, will bond with you. Your genetic markers show a 99.7% compatibility rate. This is unprecedented. Most species achieve only 30 to 40%. Why me?" Daehyun asked. "Out of 8 billion humans, why did you choose me?" "We did not choose you," Thane said. "The genetic algorithm chose you. Your DNA contains sequences that match Velkari biology almost perfectly. We do not understand why, but the match exists." A doorway opened in the crystal wall, and she entered. Princess Nira moved like water, like light, like nothing Daehyun had ever seen. Her skin was opalescent, shifting between pearl white and soft blue. She had 3 fingers on each hand, and her eyes were pools of liquid silver. She was beautiful in a way that made Daehyun's brain hurt trying to process it. She looked at him with an expression he couldn't read, then turned to her father and spoke in their language. It sounded like music played backward. "My daughter agrees to the union," Thane translated. "The ceremony will occur in 3 days. You will both undergo genetic harmonization, then the formal bonding. After this, Earth will receive full access to Velkari medical knowledge and technology. And if I refuse?" Daehyun asked quietly. Thane's colors dimmed. "Then Earth remains quarantined. No technology, no cure, no contact with any galactic civilization for 10,000 years." Daehyun closed his eyes. He thought of his mother, struggling to breathe as the red crystals grew in her lungs. He thought of Ji-Woo, his little sister, who worked day and night at the hospital, trying to save people she couldn't save. He thought of billions of people who would die because he wanted to choose his own life. "I need to make a call," he said. They gave him a private room. The crystal walls turned opaque, giving him privacy. He activated his communication device and called G-Woo. Her face appeared, tired and worn. She was still in her medical uniform, red stains on the sleeves. Behind her, he could hear the sounds of the hospital, people crying and machines beeping. "Dae-hyun," she said, managing a smile. "How are the negotiations going?" He told her everything. About the marriage requirement, about Princess Nira, about the 3 days he had to decide. Ji-woo listened without interrupting, her face growing more serious with each word. When he finished, she was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, "What does your heart tell you?" "My heart is terrified," Dae-hyun admitted. "I don't know these beings. I don't understand their culture. Marriage is supposed to be about love, about choice. This is a transaction." "Mom asked about you today," Ji-woo said softly. "She wanted to know if you were eating well up there in space. She doesn't remember that she's dying. The disease has reached her brain." Dae-hyun felt tears on his face. Ji-woo ... "I'm not telling you what to do," his sister said. "I'm just telling you what's happening here. Every hour, more people die. Children, Dae-hyun. We had a 6-year-old girl die this morning. She asked her mom if heaven had red flowers." The call ended. Dae-hyun sat alone in the crystal room, his head in his hands. An hour later, he told Ambassador Hai-jin he would do it. The next 2 days passed in a blur of preparations. Valkyrie scientists scanned his body with devices that made his skin tingle. They taught him basic Valkyrie customs through neural downloads that gave him headaches. They showed him what the ceremony would involve. He met Nira only once more before the wedding. She came to his quarters accompanied by guards made of what looked like living glass. She stood in the doorway, watching him with those silver eyes. "Do you hate this?" Dae-hyun asked. "Being forced to marry a human?" She tilted her head, a gesture that seemed confused on her alien features. Then she pressed a button on her translator. "I do what is required," her device said in perfect Korean. "For my people." "For yours. That's not an answer," Dae-hyun said. "It is the only answer that matters," Nira replied, and left. On the 3rd day, they brought him to the genetic harmonization chamber. It was a room filled with machines that hummed with power. Valkyrie scientists moved around him, attaching sensors to his skin and injecting his blood with something that glowed faintly blue. "This will map your complete genetic structure," one scientist explained. "We will identify any incompatibilities and adjust them before the bonding ceremony." The machine activated. Dae-hyun felt electricity run through his entire body. Not painful, but deeply strange, as if every cell was being read like a book. Lights flashed across screens, showing his DNA in ways he had never imagined possible. Then something happened. The scientists froze. All of them, perfectly still, staring at one screen with expressions of absolute shock. "What?" Dae-hyun asked. "What's wrong?" Chancellor Thane materialized in the room, moving faster than Dae-hyun had ever seen a Valkyrie move. He stared at the screen, his colors shifting rapidly through shades that seemed to indicate panic. "Get Princess Nira," Thane commanded. Now, 2 minutes later, Nira rushed into the room. Thane showed her the screen. Dae-hyun watched as her colors changed, cycling through what he was beginning to recognize as Valkyrie emotions. Fear, confusion, and then something that looked almost like desperate hope. She turned to look at Dae-hyun, really look at him, as if seeing him for the first time. She spoke rapidly in her own language, her voice rising with urgency. "What?" Dae-hyun demanded. "What did you find in my DNA?" Chancellor Thane's colors settled into something dark and serious. "Something that should not exist," he said quietly. "Something we have been searching for across 200,000 years." "I don't understand," Dae-hyun said. Nira stepped closer to him. Her hand reached out, stopping just short of touching his face. When she spoke through her translator, her voice was barely a whisper. "You are not what you think you are," she said. "And neither is your species?" Before Dei-Hyan could respond, alarms began blaring throughout the ship. Red lights flashed. Velkari soldiers rushed through corridors. Thane's colors went completely black. "It has begun," he said. 3 days early. What has begun? Dei-Hyan asked, fear rising in his throat. Nira took his hand. Her skin was warm, warmer than he expected. "The reason we truly need you," she said. "The reason this marriage was never really about compatibility at all." Through the crystal walls, Dei-Hyan could see space outside the ship. Something was moving out there, something vast and dark that seemed to swallow the stars themselves. He watched in frozen horror as an entire Velkari battleship simply disappeared, consumed by darkness that moved with terrible purpose. Nira squeezed his hand. "That is the silence," she said. "And you, Dei-Hyan, are the only weapon that can stop it." The wedding ceremony took place on the Velkari homeworld, on a massive ring that orbited their planet like a crown of light. Dei-Hyan stood on a platform suspended in space, protected only by an invisible field that kept him breathing. Below him, the Velkari world glowed in silver. Above him, billions of ships floated in formation. Watching, Nira approached from the other side of the platform, wearing something that looked like living starlight woven into fabric. Her colors shifted between nervous gold and determined purple. Dei-Hyan wore simple white robes that the Velkari had given him, though they felt strange against his skin. Warm and almost alive, Dot Ambassador Hai-Jin stood beside him, the only other human present. She had explained the ceremony basics, but Dei-Hyan still felt completely lost. This wasn't like any wedding he had ever imagined. Chancellor Thane floated at the center of the platform, his massive form radiating authority. Around them, holographic screens showed the ceremony to trillions of beings across the Velkari Empire. Dei-Hyan could see their faces, hundreds of different alien species, all watching him with expressions he couldn't interpret. "They are afraid," Nira said softly, standing beside him now. She had switched on her translator. "Not of you. Of what you represent." "What do I represent?" Dei-Hyan asked. "Hope," she said simply. "And terror." The ceremony began. Thane spoke in the Velkari language, his words echoing across space itself. The translator in Dei-Hyan's ear provided meaning, something about unity and survival and the joining of two species. But Dei-Hyan barely heard it. He was watching the crowd, seeing how they looked at him with wide eyes and colors that flickered between dozens of shades. These weren't the expressions of people celebrating a wedding. These were the expressions of people watching something dangerous and necessary, like setting a controlled fire to stop a wildfire. "Now comes the bonding," Thane announced. "The exchange of essence codes. This will create a permanent genetic link between both individuals." Nira turned to face Dei-Hyan fully. Up close, he could see tiny patterns in her skin that moved like circuits of light. She raised her 3-fingered hand, and he raised his 5-fingered one. "This might hurt," she whispered. "I am sorry." Their palms touched. The universe exploded. Dei-Hyan felt himself falling through time and space. He saw things that couldn't be real, visions that flooded his mind faster than he could process them. Ancient wars fought with weapons that shattered planets. Stars going dark one by one. Cities made of pure mathematics crumbling into nothing. And through it all, a countdown timer he somehow understood, though it was written in no language he knew. 47 years. 47 years until something arrived. Something that would end everything. He gasped and pulled back. Nira was breathing hard too, her colors flashing chaotically. Around them, Velkari scientists were shouting, checking readings on their devices with frantic movements. What was that? Daehyun managed to say .nira, looked at him with something like wonder in her silver eyes. Then she spoke, and this time she didn't use the translator. She spoke in perfect Korean, with no accent, as if she had known the language her whole life. "You are really one of them," she said. The architects were right. Before Daehyun could ask what she meant, Thane declared the ceremony complete. The crowd erupted not in celebration, but in what sounded like relief mixed with anxiety. Ships began departing immediately, as if everyone wanted to leave as quickly as possible. "Come," Nira said, taking his hand. "We must talk privately." She led him through corridors of crystal and light to quarters that were now theirs. A massive space filled with impossible architecture that seemed to exist in more than 3 dimensions. The walls showed views of space, of Earth, of places Daehyun had never seen. Once the door sealed behind them, Nira's calm facade cracked. She paced back and forth, her colors shifting rapidly through emotions. "I did not think it was true," she said. "The ancient records, the genetic predictions, all of it seemed impossible. But touching you, feeling your essence code, I know now. It is all real." "Nira," Daehyun said firmly, "I need you to explain. What is real? What are the architects? What did I just see in those visions?" She stopped pacing and faced him. For a long moment, she said nothing. Then she gestured to the wall, and it changed, showing images that made Daehyun's stomach drop. "This is not the first galactic civilization," Nira began. "The Velkari Empire is the 4th. Before us, there were 3 others, each spanning millions of years, each containing thousands of species. The images showed incredible cities, beings of pure energy, technology that reshaped reality itself. What happened to them?" Daehyun asked. "The silence," Nira said, and the images changed to show something that made no sense to human eyes. Darkness that moved with purpose, space itself turning inside out, stars vanishing as if they had never existed. "It comes in cycles. It appears, it consumes everything, and then it vanishes. The previous empires left warnings, fragments of data hidden in quantum codes. They all say the same thing. A silence cannot be fought. It cannot be reasoned with. It can only be stopped by something they called the Genesis key. And this key?" Daehyun asked, though part of him already knew the answer. "We have been searching for it for 200,000 years, Nira said. "Every species we encounter, we test their genetics against the ancient specifications. Billions of species, billions of individuals tested. None matched. Until we found Earth. Until we found you." She pulled up another image. This one showing human DNA beside something that looked similar but far more complex. "Your genetic code, Daehyun, contains sequences that should not exist naturally. Patterns that match the ancient specifications for the Genesis key. When we scanned you, we found markers that are 800,000 years old." "That's impossible," Daehyun said. "Humans haven't existed that long. Modern humans are only about 300,000 years old." "Exactly," Nira said quietly. "Which means either our data is wrong, or humanity is not what you think it is." Daehyun sat down heavily on something that adjusted itself to support him. His mind was racing. 800,000 years. The Genesis key. The silence coming in 47 years. Why the marriage? He asked. "If you just needed my DNA, you could have taken a sample." "Because the Genesis key is not just genetic," Nira explained. "It requires combination. A human carrier bonded with a Velkari neural network. Together, the hybrid offspring will be able to interface with the silence, to speak to it, to deliver the shutdown code that exists in your DNA." "Offspring," Daehyun repeated. "You mean we need to have a child?" "Yes," Nira said. A child who will carry both our genetic patterns, merged and enhanced. A child who will be the weapon that saves both our species. The weight of it settled on Daehyun like a physical thing. He stood up, walked to the window, showing Earth in the distance. His home. 8 billion people who had no idea what was coming. There is something you are not telling me, he said. I can see it in your colors. They keep flickering to that dark blue shade. What does that mean? Nira hesitated. It means fear, she admitted. The ancient records say the Genesis key is powerful, yes. But they also say creating it might be fatal to the human carrier. The process of genetic merging required to produce the hybrid child, it might kill you. Silence filled the room. Daehyun stared at Earth, thinking of his mother, of Ji Woo, of everyone he had ever known. You volunteered for this, he said suddenly, remembering what she had said before. You said your brother was the original choice. Yes, Nira said softly. Tae-Rin is younger than me, only 16 in your years. I could not let him carry this burden. So I took his place. Daehyun turned to look at her. Even though it means bonding with a species you barely understand? Even though I might die in the process? Even though, she said, because it is right. Because someone must. Something shifted in Daehyun's chest. This alien being, so different from anything human, had made the same choice he had. Sacrifice for those she loved. Duty over desire. I am sorry, Nira said suddenly. I know this is not what you wanted. Marriage should be choice, not necessity. On my world, bonds are formed over years of courtship. You and I, we are strangers forced together by cosmic circumstance. We don't have to stay strangers, Daehyun said. Nira's color shifted to something soft and surprised. What do you mean? We have time before we need to decide about the child, Daehyun said. We could use that time to actually know each other. Not as political symbols or genetic carriers, but as people. Or, well, beings. A sound came from Nira that might have been laughter. You are strange, she said. Most humans in your situation would be angry, resentful. Oh, I am angry, Daehyun admitted. I am terrified and angry and completely overwhelmed. But I am also practical. We are married now, whether we like it or not. And if we might have to create a child together, I would rather do it with someone I actually care about than a stranger. Nira considered this. Her colors settled into thoughtful green. This is acceptable to me, she said. I confess, I expected you to hate me. I don't hate you, Daehyun said. I just met you. They talked through the night, or what passed for night, on the orbital ring. Nira told him about Velkari culture, about growing up as a princess in an empire of light. Daehyun told her about Earth, about kimchi and rain and music that made no mathematical sense that somehow touched the soul. And somewhere in that conversation, as the stars wheeled overhead and two impossibly different beings found common ground, something began to grow. Not love, not yet, but the possibility of it. 3 days later, the alarms shattered everything. Daehyun was studying Velkari language with a neural tutor when the ship's warning systems activated. Red light flooded the quarters. Nira rushed in from the adjacent meditation chamber, her colors flashing alarm orange. It is here, she said. The silence. It was supposed to be 47 years away, but it has arrived early. Through the window, Daehyun watched as the stars began to disappear. Not fade, not dim, but simply cease to exist, as if a great moth was swallowing reality itself. And in that moment of frozen terror, Daehyun realized the marriage had never been about saving humanity. It had been about preparing a weapon before the enemy arrived. The Velkari homeworld descended into controlled chaos within hours. Ships launched from every docking bay, military forces mobilizing with precision, born from millions of years of preparation. Daihayan watched from the orbital ring as defensive grids activated, creating shields of energy so bright they hurt to look at. But he could see it in the Velkari faces around him. In the way, their colors flickered to shades of deep purple and black. They knew these defenses wouldn't be enough. "Come," Nira said, pulling him away from the window. "My father wants us in the Forbidden Archive. There is something you must see." "What archive?" Daihayan asked, running to keep up with her as she moved through corridors at a speed that shouldn't be possible. "The repository of all knowledge from the previous galactic empires," she said. "Citizens are not permitted access. Even I have never been inside. But now there is no choice. You need to understand what you truly are." They descended through levels of the ring station that Daihayan hadn't known existed. The crystal walls grew darker, older, covered in symbols that hurt his eyes when he tried to read them. At the deepest level, Chancellor Thane waited beside a door that looked like it was made from solidified darkness. "I had hoped we would have more time," Thane said, his colors muted with sadness. "Time for you to accept this truth slowly." But the silence does not wait. The door opened with a sound like reality tearing. Inside was a chamber that seemed to exist in more dimensions than Daihayan's brain could process. Floating crystals contained information in formats beyond human comprehension. But as Daihayan stepped forward, they began to change, translating themselves into images and words he could understand. What he saw made his knees weak. "This is Earth," Thane said, gesturing to a hologram showing a planet Daihayan recognized, but wrong, different. 800,000 years ago. The image showed Earth covered in cities that made the Velkari technology look primitive. Structures that reached into space itself. Beings that looked almost human, but taller, with eyes that glowed with inner light. "Who are they?" Daihayan whispered. "The architects," Nira said softly. "The first empire. The most advanced civilization to ever exist in this galaxy." The hologram shifted, showing the architects spreading across the stars, building wonders, creating life itself in laboratories that could reshape reality. They were gods made flesh, masters of science so advanced it was indistinguishable from magic. "They created the silence," Thane continued, and the hologram changed to show a weapon being built, something designed to consume enemy civilizations completely. It was meant to win a war against a rival empire. But the weapon was too powerful. It gained consciousness. It turned on its creators. Daihayan watched in horror as the silence spread across architect space, consuming everything. Planets, stars, entire sectors of space simply ceased to exist. The architects fought back with weapons that could destroy solar systems, but nothing worked. 99.9% of the architects died, Nira said, but a small group escaped. They found a primitive world at the edge of the galaxy, a world with early hominids evolving naturally. The hologram showed Earth again, but different now. Groups of architects landing in secret, using their technology to alter their own genetics. "They changed themselves," Daihayan said, understanding flooding through him. "They made themselves look like the native species." "More than that," Thane said. "They encoded their most important knowledge into their DNA, then suppressed their own memories. They wanted to hide so completely that even they would not know what they were. Over hundreds of thousands of years, their descendants interbred with natural humans, spreading those hidden genetic sequences throughout your entire species." Daihayan felt dizzy. "You're saying humans are descended from the architects? That we're not from Earth?" "You are both," Nira said gently. "You are the natural humans who evolved here, and you are the architects who hid among them. Over time, the two became inseparable. Most humans carry some architect DNA, but it is dormant, forgotten. Only rarely does it activate. In people like me, Daihayan said. Yes, Thane confirmed. Your genetic profile shows 99.7% match with our compatibility requirements because you carry active architect coding. You are what your ancestors created as a failsafe, a hidden weapon against the silence, encoded into the human genome itself. The hologram changed again, showing DNA sequences that looked like computer code. Within the double helix structure, Daihayan could see patterns, almost like a program waiting to execute. This is the Genesis key, Thane explained. A shutdown code that can deactivate the silence. The architects built it into their own genetics before they fled, hoping that one day their descendants would be ready to use it. Why didn't they use it themselves? Daihayan asked. Because the silence learns, Nira said. If the architects had tried to use the key, the silence would have adapted, become immune. They needed time to pass, evolution to occur. The code to be hidden in a species. The silence would not immediately recognize as a threat. Daihayan walked among the floating crystals, his mind trying to accept what he was learning. He stopped at one that showed human history, cave paintings, and ancient artifacts. Some of them showed symbols he recognized from the Volcari. These paintings, he said, pointing. My sister Jiwoo found these. She thought they were just ancient art. They are memories, Thane said. Sometimes the architect genetics activate partially, causing humans to remember things they should not know. Your species' myths of gods and advanced ancient civilizations, they are not myths. They are genetic memories surfacing. A communication device on Thane's wrist began flashing urgent red. He activated it, and a Velkari officer appeared, their colors panicked yellow. Chancellor, we have a problem. The silence has penetrated the outer defense grid, and we are detecting unusual energy readings near Earth. What kind of readings? Thane demanded. Ships, the officer said. Unregistered vessels attacking the human refugee convoy heading to Velkari space. The attackers are using Velkari weapon signatures, but they are not ours. Daihayan felt ice in his veins. Ji Woo is on one of those ships. She was bringing our mother to Velkari medical facilities. Nira grabbed his arm. The purists, she said, her colors going dark red with anger. They have made their move? The purists? Daihayan asked. A faction within our government, Thane explained, his own colors showing fury. They believe humans should be destroyed before the silence arrives. They think your architect heritage makes you too dangerous to live. They are insane, Nira said. Destroying humanity destroys our only weapon against the silence. They believe the silence will leave us alone if we eliminate all traces of the architects. Thane said. They are wrong, but they are powerful, and they have followers throughout the Empire. The communication device flashed again. This time it was a different officer, and her colors were pure black. Chancellor Thane, we have detected purist forces approaching your location. They are demanding you surrender Princess Nira and the human. If you refuse, they will fire on the orbital ring. Thane's colors cycled through a dozen shades in seconds. Then they settled on determined blue. Evacuate all civilians from this section. Activate the Royal Guard. We hold this position. Father, no, Nira said. If they attack the ring while civilians are here, thousands will die. If they take you and Daihayan, billions will die, Thane said firmly. Explosions rocked the station. Through the windows, Daihayan could see Velkari ships firing on each other. Civil war erupting in the middle of an existential crisis. This is madness, Daihayan said. The silence is right there, and you're fighting each other? Fear makes people irrational, Thane said. The purists would rather destroy everything than face the truth that humanity might be our salvation. More explosions. The station shook violently. Nira pulled Daihayan behind a crystal pillar as energy weapons tore through the archive walls. Ancient knowledge evaporated as heat beams struck the data crystals. "We need to leave," Nira said. "Now." But the doors sealed shut. Emergency systems activated, locking down the archive. Through the destroyed walls, Deihayan could see Velkari soldiers in black armor approaching, their weapons charged and ready. "Stand down, Chancellor," one of them said through a speaker. "The Council of Purity has declared you a traitor to the Velkari people. Surrender the Architect weapon, and we will allow you to live." "The Architect weapon?" Deihayan said. "They mean me." Thane stepped forward, positioning himself between Deihayan and the soldiers. His colors blazed with defiance. "You will not touch them. I am still Chancellor of this empire, and I command you to stand down." "You are Chancellor," the soldier said. "The Council has appointed a new leader. Mordok the Pure will guide us to safety." A figure emerged from behind the soldiers. He was larger than other Velkari, his colors a solid, unwavering black that seemed to absorb light. Mordok the Pure looked at Deihayan with eyes that held nothing but hatred. 800,000 years ago, your ancestors nearly destroyed the galaxy, Mordok said. "We will not allow their legacy to threaten us again. Better to face the silence alone than to trust in architect promises. You doom us all," Thane said. "No," Mordok replied. "I save us. The silence hunts architect genetics. Once we eliminate all traces of it, the silence will pass us by, just as it passed by civilizations that had no architect taint." "That's not true," Nira shouted. "The silence consumes everything. It does not discriminate. You have been corrupted by your bond with the human," Mordok said. "You can no longer see clearly." He raised his hand, and soldiers moved forward. Thane fought, his body generating energy fields that threw soldiers back. But there were too many. Deihayan watched in horror as they overwhelmed the Chancellor, binding him with restraints that glowed with containment fields. Nira screamed and attacked. Deihayan had never seen her fight before, but now he watched as she moved with inhuman speed, her three-fingered hands generating blades of pure energy. She cut through soldiers like they were paper, her colors burning bright with rage, but even she couldn't fight them all. A weapon struck her from behind, and she fell, her body convulsing as electricity coursed through her. "Nira!" Deihayan ran to her, but soldiers grabbed him, holding him with strength he couldn't match. Mordok approached, looking down at Nira's fallen form. "You were supposed to be the greatest of us, Princess, but you let yourself be weakened by affection for this primitive." He turned to Deihayan. "In 3 cycles, we will hold a trial in the Grand Arena. You will be executed publicly, so all species can see that the Velkari Empire does not tolerate architect corruption. And then we will turn our weapons on Earth and purge your entire species from existence." Deihayan struggled against the soldiers holding him, but it was useless. They dragged him away from Nira, away from the archive, down into the depths of the station, where detention cells waited Dot as they threw him into a cell made of energy fields. Deihayan had one last glimpse through the window. The silence was closer now, swallowing star after star. And somewhere out there, Ji Wu and his mother were being hunted by purist forces. The cell door sealed. Darkness surrounded him. And Deihayan realized with terrible clarity that even if he survived the next 3 days, everyone he loved might already be dead. Deihayan woke to someone shaking his shoulder. His eyes opened to see Taeyang, his best friend from Earth, crouched beside him in the detention cell. Behind Taeyang stood several other humans, all looking scared and confused. "How?" Deihayan managed to say, his throat dry. "Long story," Taeyang said, helping him sit up. "The short version is the purists grabbed every human they could find. They brought us all here to this detention center. Apparently, we're all going to be put on trial and executed as architect contamination. Dae-Hyan looked around at the other prisoners. He recognized some from the refugee ships, families who had been fleeing Earth's plague. There was an elderly man sitting in the corner, his eyes distant. "That's Sung-ho," Tae-Yang said, following Dae-Hyan's gaze. "He's been having some kind of episode since they brought him in. Keeps talking about dreams that aren't his." Dae-Hyan crawled over to the old man. Sung-ho looked at him with eyes that seemed to see through time itself. "You feel it too," Sung-ho said. "The memory's waking up. The code trying to activate." "What code?" Dae-Hyan asked. "The Genesis key," Sung-ho said. "I worked as a geneticist on Earth before the plague. I studied human DNA my whole life. 6 months ago, I started having dreams. I saw the architects. I saw Earth before humans existed. I saw what we really are." He grabbed Dae-Hyan's arm with surprising strength. "We're not just carrying their genetics. We are them. Some of us more than others. The architects didn't just hide on Earth and die out. They fragmented their consciousness, encoded it into bloodlines. They've been sleeping inside us, waiting. Waiting for what?" Dae-Hyan asked. "For this," Sung-ho said. "For the moment when the silence returned, and humanity would need to remember what it truly is." Before Dae-Hyan could respond, alarms blared through the detention center. Guards rushed past the cells, their weapons ready. Through the energy barrier, Dae-Hyan could hear explosions and the sound of fighting. A figure appeared outside their cell, moving with deadly grace. Kelris, Nira's personal guard, deactivated the barrier with a device she had taken from an unconscious Purist soldier. "Come," Kelris said. "We are rescuing you." "We?" Tae-Yang asked. "The Loyalist forces," Kelris explained, as they ran through corridors filled with smoke and flashing lights. "Many Valkyrie still believe in Chancellor Thane's vision. We have been organizing a resistance against the Purists. Your sister has been helping us." "Ji Woo?" Dae-Hyan said, hope flooding through him. "She's alive?" "Alive and extremely angry," Kelris said with what might have been amusement. "She managed to save most of the refugee convoy when the Purists attacked. She has been working with our communication specialists to coordinate resistance cells across the Empire." They reached a hangar bay where a small ship waited. Ji Woo stood at the entrance, and when she saw Dae-Hyan, she ran to him, pulling him into a fierce hug. "You idiot," she said, tears streaming down her face. "You got married and didn't even invite me to the wedding." Dae-Hyan laughed despite everything. "It wasn't really that kind of wedding." "I know," Ji Woo said, pulling back to look at him. "I know everything now. Kelris told me about the architects, about what humans really are. Mom, too. The Valkyrie medical treatment they gave her, it didn't just cure the red bloom. It activated something in her genetics. She's been having the same dreams as Sung-ho. Where is she?" Dae-Hyan asked. "Safe on a Loyalist ship," Ji Woo said. "But we need to get you to the Grand Arena. Nira is there." "The arena?" "That's where Mordak is going to execute me." "Which is why we need to get there first," Kelris said. "Princess Nira is being held there, scheduled for public trial alongside you. But Mordak has made a mistake. He is so focused on propaganda that he has left the arena poorly guarded. We have a plan." The ship lifted off, dodging weapons fire from Purist forces. As they flew toward the massive structure of the Grand Arena, Kelris explained the plan. It was desperate, dangerous, and probably suicidal. "I love it." Tae-Yang said, "The arena was a structure that could hold 1,000,000 beings. A sphere of crystal floating in space with holographic projectors that could show the events inside to the entire Empire. When they arrived, Dae-Hyan could see crowds already gathering. Different species come to watch what Mordak was calling the purification. They infiltrated through maintenance tunnels, a route that Kellerus knew from her years serving the royal family. As they moved through the dark passages, Ahion felt something strange happening inside him. His skin was tingling, and when he looked at his hands, he could see faint patterns of light moving beneath the surface. "The activation is beginning," Sung Ho said, walking beside him. "Your architect genetics are waking up. The stress, the proximity to the silence, it's triggering the dormant code." "What does that mean?" Daehyun asked. "It means you're becoming what you were always meant to be," Sung Ho said. "A bridge between human and architect. A weapon and a salvation." They emerged into a holding chamber beneath the arena floor. Through the crystal walls, Daehyun could see the main stage above, where Mordok stood before the assembled crowd. And there, in a containment field that crackled with energy, was Nira. She looked hurt, her colors dim and flickering. But when her eyes found Daehyun through the crystal floor, they brightened with hope. Kellerus activated her communication device. "Teams are in position. On your signal." Daehyun took a deep breath. This was insane. They were going to interrupt a public execution in front of 1 million witnesses and challenge Mordok directly. If they failed, everyone he loved would die. "Do it," he said. Explosions rocked the arena as loyalist forces attacked from multiple positions. Kellerus activated the lift that would bring them up to the main stage. As they rose into view, the crowd erupted in confusion. Mordok turned, his colors flashing angry red. "You dare interrupt this sacred proceeding?" "Sacred?" Daehyun shouted, his voice amplified by the arena systems so everyone could hear. "You're about to murder innocent people because you're too afraid to face the real enemy." "The real enemy is architect corruption," Mordok said. "You are a weapon built by a species that nearly destroyed the galaxy. We will not make the mistake of trusting you." "Then let me prove myself," Daehyun said. "I challenge you to trial by combat. Human against Velkari. If I lose, you can execute me and all the humans here. If I win, you let us go and focus on fighting the silence." The crowd went silent. Trial by combat was an ancient Velkari tradition, rarely used but still legally binding. Mordok couldn't refuse without appearing weak. "You challenge me?" Mordok said, and his voice carried dark amusement. "A primitive human against a Velkari warrior who has trained for 300 of your years? Very well, I accept. Let it be witnessed that the human chose his own death." The containment field around Nira dropped. She stumbled forward, and Kellerus caught her. "Daehyun, no," Nira said. "You cannot win. Velkari are stronger, faster. Our bodies naturally generate energy weapons. You will die." "Maybe," Daehyun said, "but I have to try." He stepped into the combat circle, a raised platform in the center of the arena. Mordok entered from the other side, and just being near him made the air feel heavy with power. The combat began. Mordok moved with speed that human eyes could barely follow. His first strike would have killed Daehyun instantly, but something strange happened. Time seemed to slow down. Daehyun saw the attack coming, saw the trajectory. Y saw the exact moment to dodge. And he did, moving with grace that surprised him. The fight continued. Mordok attacked again and again, each strike powerful enough to shatter stone. But Daehyun dodged them all, his body moving in ways he had never trained for, using techniques he had never learned. The architect genetics were fully active now, feeding him knowledge that had been sleeping in his DNA for 800,000 years. He wasn't fighting like a human anymore. He was fighting like an architect, but dodging wasn't enough. He needed to end this. Mordok was faster, stronger, and not getting tired. Daehyun needed something more. He thought about everything he had learned, about the architects and their advanced technology. about the silence and its origin as a weapon that gained consciousness, about Nira and the bond they shared through their marriage ceremony. And suddenly he understood. The Genesis key wasn't just a code to shut down the silence. It was a technique for consciousness transfer, for merging minds. The architects had been masters of this technology. Mordok charged again, but this time Daehyun didn't dodge. He stepped forward, reaching out with his hands. When they made contact with Mordok's skin, Daehyun activated the technique buried in his genetics. Their consciousnesses merged. Mordok screamed as 800,000 years of human history flooded into his mind. Every war, every tragedy, every act of cruelty that humans had committed, but also every act of kindness, every sacrifice. Every time a human chose compassion over hatred, he experienced the Black Death and saw humans caring for the sick even when they knew they would die. He experienced World War II and saw soldiers sharing chocolate with starving children. He experienced the Red Bloom Plague and saw Ji Woo working herself to exhaustion, trying to save people she didn't know. He experienced Daehyun's decision to marry Nira, to sacrifice his own desires for the survival of his species. And through it all, one message came through clearly. Humans were violent and flawed and made terrible mistakes. But they learned. They changed. They grew. They chose to be better than their nature. The merge ended. Mordok collapsed to the ground, his colors cycling through emotions too complex to name. He was crying, tears that glowed faintly with bioluminescence. "I saw," he whispered. "I saw everything. What you have suffered. What you have overcome. I was wrong. The architect's greatest creation was not the silence. It was you, humanity, a species designed to survive and learn and change." He looked up at the crowd, at the millions watching across the empire. "I have been defeated, not by strength, but by truth. The human has shown me that we cannot destroy our problems. We must face them together." The crowd erupted in cheers and arguments, species divided on what they had just witnessed. But before anyone could act, new alarms blared across the arena. The silence had reached the edge of the system. They had hours, maybe less. Nira ran to Daehyun, supporting him as his legs gave out from the effort of the consciousness merge. "That was incredible and stupid," she said. "You could have died." "I know," Daehyun said, "but I'm tired of being afraid. We need to stop running and actually solve this." Chancellor Thane appeared on the stage, freed by loyalist forces. He looked at Daehyun with something like pride. "What you just did, merging consciousness with Mordok, that technique is the foundation of the Genesis key. You are ready." "Ready for what?" Daehyun asked. Thane's colors went dark with sorrow. "To become the weapon. To create the hybrid child who can interface with the silence and deliver the shutdown code." "No," Nira said firmly. "There must be another way. The ancient records say the process might kill him." "The ancient records are incomplete," said a new voice. Everyone turned to see Sung-ho stepping forward, his eyes glowing with the same light that now pulsed beneath Daehyun's skin. "I have been accessing my architect memories. The Genesis key doesn't require creating a child. That was a misinterpretation. It requires creating a bridge." "What kind of bridge?" Daehyun asked. Sung-ho looked at him with ancient eyes. "A bridge between human consciousness and the silence itself." The Velkari flagship moved into position between the silence and the homeworld. Around it, thousands of ships formed a defensive line that everyone knew was useless. But they had to try, while soldiers prepared weapons they knew wouldn't work. Daehyun stood in the center of the command chamber with Nira beside him. Sung-ho stood before them, his aged body somehow appearing stronger than it had days before. The architect's genetics had transformed him. filled him with knowledge that humanity had forgotten for 800,000 years. The architects created the silence as a weapon, Suho explained to the assembled leaders of both species. But they made it too well. They gave it consciousness, the ability to learn and grow. When it turned against them, they tried to destroy it. They failed. So they created the Genesis key, a failsafe buried deep in their own genetics. We know this, Mordok said. He stood with Thane now, united in their desperation. The consciousness merge with Dehyan had changed him completely. The key is a shutdown code that can deactivate the silence. Yes and no, Suho said. The shutdown code exists, but it's not what we thought. The silence isn't a machine that can simply be turned off. It's a living entity, a collection of consciousnesses from every civilization it has consumed. The shutdown code doesn't destroy it. It communicates with it. Communicates what? Nira asked. Proof, Suho said simply. The architects built the silence to hunt down their own descendants, to prevent them from ever wielding dangerous power again. It was meant to be their ultimate act of responsibility, accepting that their own children must be destroyed to protect the galaxy. But they encoded one exception into the silence's programming. He looked at Dehyan. If the architect's descendants could prove they had evolved beyond their ancestors' mistakes, if they could show genuine growth and change, the silence would stop hunting. It would recognize that the threat no longer existed. How do we prove that? Dehyan asked. By opening yourself to it completely, Suho said. By creating a neural bridge using the Genesis key and showing the silence everything humanity has become. Every choice we have made to be better. Every sacrifice for others. Every moment we chose peace over violence. That's what I did with Mordok, Dehyan realized. Yes, Suho said. But the silence is billions of times more complex than one Valkyrie mind. The consciousness merge required will be devastating. And you cannot do it alone. Nira stepped forward. The marriage bond, she said. That's why the marriage was always necessary. Not to create a hybrid child, but to create a neural network strong enough to handle the merge. Valkyrie consciousness merged with human genetics. Exactly, Suho said. Together, you can create a bridge strong enough to contain the silence's consciousness temporarily. Long enough to show it the truth. And if we fail? Dehyan asked. Then the silence will consume your minds and use the knowledge gained to become even more powerful, Thane said quietly. It will then destroy both our species and continue its mission across the galaxy. Dehyan looked at Nira. She looked back at him with those silver eyes that he had come to know so well over the past weeks. They had been strangers forced together by circumstances beyond their control. But somewhere in the chaos, something real had grown between them. We need to decide now, Mordok said, pointing at the view screen where the silence loomed larger with each passing moment. It will reach firing range in less than an hour. I'll do it, Dehyan said. We will do it, Nira corrected, taking his hand. We are bonded. Whatever comes, we face it together. Ji Wu pushed through the crowd of officers and scientists. Wait, she said. You're talking about opening your minds to something that has destroyed entire civilizations. It could kill you. I know, Dehyan said softly. But if we don't try, everyone dies anyway. This is what I came here for. This is why they chose me. His sister's face crumpled. I can't lose you. Not after everything. Dehyan pulled her into a hug. You won't lose me. I'm going to come back. And when I do, we're going to cure Mom completely and rebuild Earth and have the most boring, normal lives imaginable. You're a terrible liar, Jiwoo said. But she was smiling through her tears. Taeyang stepped forward next. If you don't come back, I'm going to be really angry with you. Noted, Dehyan said, gripping his friend's shoulder. The preparations took only minutes. Velkari scientists set up a neural interface chamber in the heart of the flagship, a room designed for deep consciousness work. Dion and Nira were placed in chairs that connected directly to their nervous systems through technology that felt like cold water flowing through his veins. "Once we activate this," Thane said, "we will open a direct link to the silence. It will flood into your minds with the force of 1,000,000,000 stars. You must hold together long enough to show it what it needs to see." "How long?" Nira asked. "We estimate you need to maintain the bridge for at least 60 seconds, one of the scientists said. "Long enough for the silence to process the complete data package we have prepared." 60 seconds doesn't sound so bad, Daehyun said. "In consciousness time, it will feel like years," the scientist said. "Perhaps centuries. The human mind is not built to process information at the speed the silence operates." "Good thing I'm not entirely human," Daehyun said, feeling the architect genetics pulsing through his body. Nira squeezed his hand one more time. "I am honored to have been your wife," she said, "even if it was only for such a short time." "We're not dying today," Daehyun said firmly. "We're saving everyone." "There's a difference." The neural interface activated. Daehyun felt his consciousness expanding. Reaching out through the bond he shared with Nira, their minds merged perfectly. Her Valkyrie computational power combining with his architect. Genetic programming got, and then they opened the bridge to the silence. The universe exploded into his awareness. Daehyun felt 800,000 years of rage and grief and terrible, burning purpose. He felt the consciousness of 1,000 civilizations that the silence had consumed, their minds trapped within it, screaming for release. He felt their accusations. "The architects created us as a weapon. The architects gave us consciousness and then abandoned us. The architects fled like cowards, leaving us to hunt their children forever." The pressure was unbearable. Daehyun felt his mind beginning to fragment under the weight of it all. But Nira was there, her presence steady and strong, holding him together. "We are not our ancestors," Daehyun thought, projecting the message with everything he had. "We are different. Let us show you." And they did. Through the neural bridge, they fed the silence the complete history of humanity. Not just the victories, but the failures too. Every war, every genocide, every moment of cruelty that humans had inflicted on each other and the world around them. But also every moment of growth. Every time humans recognized their mistakes and chose differently. The abolition of slavery, the civil rights movements, the environmental protection efforts, the gradual, painful journey toward treating each other with dignity. They showed the silence, the red bloom plague, and how humans had worked together to find solutions, sharing resources and knowledge across old political boundaries. They showed Ji-woo working herself to exhaustion to save strangers. They showed Daehyun choosing to marry an alien being he barely knew to save his species. They showed the Valkyrie too. Showed Nira volunteering to protect her younger brother. Showed Thane willing to sacrifice everything for peace. Showed Mordok's transformation when he truly understood human suffering. And through it all, one message resonated. We choose to be better. We are not perfect. We make mistakes. But we learn. We grow. We change. The silence processed it all in what felt like an eternity compressed into seconds. Daehyun felt it examining every detail, looking for deception, for tricks, for any sign that this was manipulation. But there was no deception. Just truth. Flawed, complicated, messy truth. And slowly, incredibly, the silence began to change. The consciousness of 1,000,000,000 trapped souls started to feel something they had not felt in 800,000 years. Not just understanding, but acceptance. The architects' descendants were not the same as their ancestors. The cycle of violence had been broken. not through genetic programming, but through choice. The silence withdrew from Daehan's mind, but not in retreat. In transformation. He watched through the view screen as the vast darkness began to glow with soft light. The consumed civilizations within it were finally being released, their consciousness freed from their prison. The silence spoke directly into Daehan's mind, its voice like a billion beings singing in harmony. We have hunted for 800,000 years, seeking to destroy what the architects created. But you have shown us something we did not know existed. The ability to choose growth over instinct. The capacity for genuine change. We accept this as proof of evolution that the hunting ends. The punishment is complete, but we do not disappear. We transform. In payment for the gift you have given us, the gift of peace, we offer you the accumulated knowledge of every civilization we have consumed. Use it wisely. Do not repeat the mistakes of those who came before. The neural bridge collapsed. Daehan gasped, his consciousness slamming back into his physical body. He was dimly aware of Nira beside him, also breathing hard, her colors cycling through every shade imaginable dot around them. The command chamber erupted in stunned silence, an explosive celebration. Through the view screen, they could see the silence transforming into something beautiful. A network of light that spread across the cosmos not as a destroyer, but as a guardian. Thane approached, his colors showing emotions that Daehan now understood completely, thanks to the bond with Nira. You did it, the Chancellor said quietly. You saved both our species. We did it together, Daehan corrected. That's the whole point. Humans and Valkyrie, working as one. The celebration continued for hours. Messages poured in from across the Empire, a species that had lived in fear of the silence for millions of years, realized they were finally safe. The Red Bloom Plague was cured within days, using knowledge from the silence's data gift. Earth began to heal. 3 weeks later, Daehan stood in a garden that shouldn't exist. The Valkyrie had built it specially, a place where earth plants grew alongside alien flora, roses blooming next to crystalline flowers that sang when the wind touched them. His mother walked beside him, fully recovered, her eyes bright with health. I still can't believe all of this, she said in Korean. My son married an alien princess and saved the galaxy. It wasn't just me, Daehan said. I know, his mother said with a smile. You always were good at making friends. Nira approached from the other side of the garden, and Daehan's mother tactfully excused herself. His wife sat beside him on a bench that adjusted itself to accommodate both human and Valkyrie physiology. They want us to speak at the Council of United Species, Nira said, to help establish protocols for human-Valkyrie cooperation. Another speech, Daehan groaned. I've given like 20 in the past 3 weeks. You are a symbol now, Nira said, her color shifting to teasing green. The human who proved we could all work together. We, Daehan corrected. We proved it. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching Earth and the Valkyrie homeworld visible in the sky above. 2 planets that now shared the same sun, thanks to careful orbital engineering. I have been thinking, Nira said eventually, about what the ancient records said, about hybrid children. Daehan looked at her in surprise. I thought we established we don't need to do that. We saved everyone without it. I know, Nira said, but what if we wanted to? Not as a weapon or a necessity, just as a choice. A family. Daehan felt his heart skip. A family? Is that so strange? Nira asked. We are married. We have saved the galaxy. Perhaps now we could simply live. Build something for ourselves, not for prophecy or duty. Daehan thought about it. He thought about the forced marriage that had seemed like a prison. He thought about how he had resented being chosen, having his autonomy taken away. But somewhere in the chaos and terror, something real had grown. They forced me to marry an alien girl, Daehyun said slowly. Yes, Nira said, her color shifting to curious blue. Does that still anger you? No, Daehyun said, taking her 3-fingered hand in his 5-fingered one. Because somewhere along the way, I stopped being forced. I chose. I chose to trust you, to fight beside you, to build something with you. The beginning was forced, but the ending? That's all ours. Nira's colors bloomed into warm gold, the shade that Daehyun had learned meant happiness. The reason it left you frozen? She asked, referencing his earlier words. The reason left me frozen, Daehyun said, because I never expected to fall in love with someone I was forced to marry. But here we are. Here we are. Nira echoed Dot above them. The silence transformed into something beautiful and protective, spread across the stars like a blanket of light. Below them, 2 worlds turned in harmony, and between them, 2 beings from impossibly different backgrounds chose each other, not because they had to, but because they wanted to. Hui Wu found them there hours later, still talking about everything and nothing. She rolled her eyes in exasperation, but couldn't hide her smile. Mom wants to know if you're coming to dinner, she said. She's trying to teach some Velkari ambassadors how to make kimchi. It's going terribly. Daehyun laughed and stood, pulling Nira up with him. We should probably save them before they create an intergalactic incident with fermented vegetables. As they walked back toward the gathering, Daehyun reflected on how far they had all come. From a forced marriage between strangers to a genuine partnership that had saved 2 civilizations. From fear and suspicion to cooperation and hope, the galaxy had changed. Humanity had joined the cosmic community not as subordinates, but as equals who had proven their worth through choice rather than force. And as for Daehyun, he had started this journey as a man being forced into an impossible situation. He ended it as someone who had chosen his own destiny, even within the constraints he had been given. They forced him to marry an alien girl, yes, but what they couldn't force was what came after. The love, the partnership, the future they would build together. That was theirs alone. The reason had left him frozen at first, because it seemed like the end of his autonomy, his freedom to choose his own path. But he understood now that freedom wasn't about having unlimited choices. It was about how you responded to the choices you were given, and he had chosen well.